Hey guys, how's it going?
Hello and welcome.
Welcome. How do you guys
How's
like that
everyone
new
doing?
intro?
That was a pretty sweet intro. I enjoyed it. I watched the whole thing.
Looking good.
Banger.
Welcome back, Henry.
So what's new with? Yeah, I know. I feel like I've been on a hiatus here for the last month or so.
Been busy.
How have you guys been?
So we're good. Except for the big downside. This is the most boring week in sports. The All-Star week. Nothing happens.
That is the downside.
Yep. Nope. Was cool to see Javier Baez and Crow Armstrong get time together on the field, though, after they swapped places for the Cubs. see them both make the All-Star team together. So
Baez is like a reinvented player. I don't know where this came from all of a sudden, but he looks awesome.
yeah, no, that's it's interesting to see like him, Kyle Schwarber, and some of the others kind of find new life.
It was so weird, like watching the All-Star game and finding myself like cheering for Kyle Schwarber to hit home runs at the end. Like, this doesn't feel right.
That's the
We
beauty
all
of
got
All-Star
united
games.
for a few hours.
Yeah. I saw a stat that the MLB All-Star game had the most viewership of the big sports All-Stars. So they're doing something right.
believe it.
Or
There's
that's the
nothing else
only
on.
option on right now. There's no competing interests. So
Right? What else are you watching? Like professional Parcheesi or something? That's it.
Could be you could be watching music. That never stops. I was at a concert last night. I was up past my bedtime, but it was very worth it. I can now I checked off. I've seen all 5 of my top 5 favorite bands live. So I went to see the Silver Sun Pickups last night. It was incredible.
Nice. I have no idea who that is,
That's
but
awesome.
it sounds like it was a good time.
They're good. But you know, there was no Coldplay cheating scandals there. I can tell you that much. If you saw all the memes on that.
The memes have been hilarious on that.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into our stories here and see if we can get some, Coldplay to help us on some of these here. Maybe not, but all right. Our first one comes to us from Reddit Bank on IT server Survivor. Is this messed up or am I overreacting? This is a pretty long post, so I'll try to give a TLDR here. So, MSP escalation technician was nearly fired for a backup failure they didn't cause. The server was rebuilt with a backup agent installed before attaching the data drive, which automatically excluded it from the backups. When application update failed and needed restoration, the data wasn't backed up. The author was called Saturday to help diagnose the issue, then blamed by management for excluding the drive and running the backup, both false accusations proven by the logs. The help desk manager later revealed the owner tried to fire them without investigation. The author asks if being offended and mad is overreacting. I mean, no.
Well, it sounds like there's some process and accountability issues in general here, but yeah. The long and short of it seems that finger pointing over the missing backups is kind of the crux of the issue here.
Yeah. It seems like no at face value. And I echo Henry, right? There should be some change control as far as who can even exclude this or like how it got this way in the first place. But I'm also seeing this and remembering we're only getting this one dude's side of the story. Everybody looks innocent in their own account of events. So I'm slightly skeptical. But at face value, it's not an overreaction.
No, and to that point, you kind of wonder if this was the straw that broke the camel's back. What were the other reasons that the manager was, already had his sights on him?
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Was this the final mistake, or like had he messed up things before and the assumption was he got this one wrong? I have no idea. He could be the perfect employee. We don't know.
Yep. Well, and I think Henry said it right away, the process. So who is, responsible and accountable for the backups? It doesn't seem like there is any of that, right? From the other, if there's no procedures in place, then it's just kind of, finger pointing, which does happen. But also at the end of the day, I mean, you try to get over the immediate situation and rectify it, and then try to find a root cause analysis. And I mean, then coaching instead of just getting mad at one particular thing and saying you're fired. I mean, that's everyone's going to make mistakes, especially when it comes to IT. So if you're going to fire somebody over making a mistake, well, now you have to train another employee and hope they don't make the same mistake, rather than, hey, well, now your employee that's already trained is now also trained to not make that mistake going forward. Part of the the RCA and the kappa is corrective actions and what we can do to prevent it going forward, and that is make these policies or standards on testing and verifying these.
Yeah, this is a good example. I mean, I've seen this specific thing happen before to other companies where the data drive got excluded or someone did a migration and all of a sudden like the D drive became the E drive and like D was temp space or like rendering volume or something, right? Or something like that. It really, when it comes to backups, I think like the broader point here is it's very easy for backup checks to be basically going through and seeing if there were any errors in the backups, and that's kind of it. There is some element of going back and re-verifying configuration like schedules and just watching for general configuration drift. And that's, I think, the bigger takeaway from this, right? There's always going to be these interpersonal, my manager hates me things from anyone who has this happen to them, but it's a good illustrative example of just what can get missed easily. Like not even from anyone's fault, right? They were probably very diligent in their backup checks and just didn't think, oh, I have to check what's being backed up in addition to checking for failures.
Yeah, and I mean, this is why you have E&O insurance, right? Like this is I'm not an insurance person, but I assume that this would be something covered by it. To my understanding, but I think there's a line too of like whoever refreshed that server initially potentially could have set it up, or the person who kicked off the manual backup also could have checked. Like there's not just one person, it's just a collective team. And like you said, we are getting one side of it, so maybe there's a pattern or a history of this, and we don't know. We can only go off of the story we have.
Yeah, well, as it's described, it sounds like there's multiple failures here, as far as from scoping, documentation, process, having some type of validation that the backups are good, that they do have. So, yeah, I doubt that, as at least this is presented, that it was one single person or one single failure. But yeah, to your guys' point, we were only getting one side of this. So,
taking from this, you putting on your manager hat, is there a mistake of this caliber that you would let an employee go over if this was the first time it happened? Taking the context of this story.
if it was malicious,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of much accidental that would cause that, cause you to let somebody go for one mistake.
Yeah. How about you, Josh? Is there something that you'd be like, oh, no, that's a no-go, no fly, immediately gone?
No, like you said, if it's accidental, it's a teaching moment. And my management style is always not finger pointing like, hey, we're a team. So, did I set you up for failure? Was there other safeguards that I didn't have in place? What could I have done differently to try to prevent this, rather than, hey, go through the list and at the very end, like, okay, well, it was an accident and we're all going to learn from it. So there's really not much. I'm not one of those trigger happy that just is, shooting from the hip. I mean, it makes for great Reddit content, but that's not my style.
Well, if I can soapbox
right.
for just a second on this, it's just like reminder number 150,000 that when it comes to backups, you need to be checking for success and not the lack of failure.
Yeah. If you don't test your backups, you don't have backups, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and go for an external issue that we're having. So not internal, but external. How long to give up on a lead? This is starting to annoy me. We have a meeting or phone call with a potential client. We get their requirements, get a price or quick 2-pager proposal, and then just silence. This particular one was a replacement of 18 computers. They gave us the exact model. We got the price and sent back within 2 hours. We even did it with no markup. I emailed them, called, and all we get is nothing. Also sent another price for, looks like a service offering for a 28-person company, everything included, and nothing. So how long should we give after how long should we give up? We're a new provider, we need sales, and we have next to nothing for marketing. Yeah, that's the gist of it. So he just kind of goes on to continue with this. What is this guy doing wrong? Matt, you want to start?
I mean, I guess the question is, what does give up mean in this context? That many follow-ups to me reeks of desperation on the salesperson's part. But when it comes to especially like managed services deals, the sales cycle can be pretty long. And I think it's a question of, if this guy comes a year later and wants service, okay, I'll take the phone call. What I'm not going to do is like call over and over again for a replacement quote, right? You want the service, here's what it costs, and there's not a whole lot left to negotiate beyond that, especially if you're already pretty fair on pricing and things. Now, if you get into, okay, maybe there's a discount on the startup project if you're going to sign a long-term deal, if this is a company that does ad hoc work, for example, that's a little bit different. There's some stuff to talk about there. But I personally, now remember, I'm not a salesperson, but when I was doing deals and working on managed services and pro services accounts, I would give a couple follow-ups and maybe, a month later check in, do you still need this? But it was genuinely like, do you still need this? It's hard to describe, but there's a way to ask that so it doesn't look like you're desperate for the sale and you're genuinely asking, hey, can I close this out or do you still need it? And that's kind of as far as I would go on this stuff. It was like, call me back if you need to pick this up again. We'll let it out. I'd be curious to hear the perspective of someone who's better at sales than me, though.
I would say, Henry, I want to dive in on something specific. What do you feel about him sending the laptop quote with zero markup?
Yeah, no, that's I wouldn't be doing that at all. I don't do discounts though in general. It just our margin is our margin because it's what we need in order to survive in our business. So I'm pretty strict on that.
Well, what if, hold on.
And again, I'm also not a sales guru.
But the markup is just to get my foot in the door with you. I mean, that seems like a good tactic, right?
Yeah, I know people believe in loss leaders and stuff, but I think that undervalues your service and what you do, and it sets a customer expectation for the future when you do those things. So I'm pretty adamant against doing any type of discount, even as a loss leader. Yeah, I think it just kind of sets up the relationship for failure in the future. With this specific thing, though, one of the things that I do appreciate about sales process is understanding the no's that you get and kind of reflecting on your sales process to better qualify your leads. So hopefully this individual is doing some type of postmortem to understand the no's that they're getting when they can get those explanations, whether that's sticker price or their timing's not right, whatever. Hopefully that is helping them to kind of go back and adjust how they're looking at these leads earlier on, rather than investing a ton of time into the sales process. With someone that obviously doesn't have the budget or time to close the deal at that juncture. So as far as the number of actual follow-ups that I would do in this scenario, it'd probably be like maybe 3 to 5, and then it's just going to kick over to a nurture campaign if there's absolutely no response.
One thing I
don't know, Josh.
I'm going to preface this with saying I'm also not a sales or marketing guru, but sales and marketing are two different things. So saying you don't have marketing, I mean, that's fine, but your sales is different. The first thing that sticks out to me, just based off of experience, is if the incumbent is saying, "Hey, I need this exact model," they're probably price shopping to keep their current provider, honest, or just getting some sort of idea with that. Um, Typically, the people aren't that informed when they're asking for a quote on that. So that would be kind of my first flag, and doesn't always mean, but based off my experience, and I don't know if you guys agree with that, but that would be what I would feel on this. And then, to your point too, is yeah, the MSP sales cycle is extremely long. I mean, it can be anywhere, 2 weeks if you've got the needle in the haystack to 36 months almost. So you have to build your funnel, the top, the middle, the bottom, and understand that. And like you said, do the postmortems. I agree with the follow-ups. You do a follow-up, maybe in a week or two, and no more than 3, and phrase it in a way to where, hey, I'm closing out this opportunity. Please keep us in mind when you're ready to, or if you need help in the future, however you want to word that. But I think it's just you're gonna get so many more no's before you get that yes. So it can be frustrating and absolutely disheartening, but you just kind of have to keep on keeping on.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this is just an issue that, I mean, you're always going to have people that ghost you. And I think about the number of salespeople that call on me and how overwhelming that can be. So, yeah, certainly not coming across as desperate and blasting them constantly for communication, and kind of taking a little empathy in some of those situations with people that you deal with that are trying to sell to you as well, of like, hey, give them some direction at least.
Oh man, that is such a good point. Like, if you're talking to you yourself, talking to a vendor, man, just tell them no if you're not interested right now. They're used to hearing it. Everyone in sales has heard it a million times, and a clean no, not right now is so much better for everyone than this ignoring thing. I don't know what it is. I've seen people on my team just like being afraid to say no to people, and just like, man, affirm this isn't happening right now is much appreciated on the sales side.
Yeah, I was so relieved coming to a place that has that. Yeah, it's not right, rather than trying to just shoehorn it in. Um, So let's keep on going here. The next story is one that it was deleted, but we wanted to cover it because we have some good topics on that. It is not your lack of preparation. This one is we probably don't have a graphic for it because the story did get repeated. But this is another one. The title was "Outgoing Provider Won't Remove Tools Data." EDR was on there, but the tool is irrelevant. So Matt, do you want to give us the synopsis on this one?
Yeah, so the poster was with an MSP that took on a new client, and the outgoing one was having trouble, or maybe refusing, maybe not. Again, it's very one-sided, but the perspective was that they couldn't get the old tools removed and kept reinstalling, and it turned into a discussion about responsibility for comms during this. There were even some questions about like contractual obligations during it. And I think, if I remember the thread correctly, the environment ended up having the equivalent of like a lab tech probe, or the same thing in other RMMs, or maybe a group policy deployment that kept redeploying the agent MSI. So it turned into an interesting discussion about how to handle that as the winning MSP, so to speak, when there's an incumbent in there, and who owns that responsibility, what it looks like, and what to do if it's a tool that's not as easily removed, like an EDR that requires an uninstall password, or those are almost impossible to get rid of without wiping the machine. So what do you do in that situation?
I think the responsibility as part of the ongoing project is the good one, is, you know, hey, making sure that the outgoing MSP has their tools removed by this date, and then, you know, having a security lockdown after that, like, hey, you know, they were removed, so now we're changing the passwords, killing the accounts, etc. But if the software is still on there, I think it would, and that can be a little bit of a tricky one, in that it depends on the contractual obligations of there, but it's almost on the client to communicate with the outgoing MSP saying, hey, your tools are still on here, um, and they need to be removed.
Not
Yeah, I
almost.
think. Yeah, I was to say it's a lot of documentation and communicating is like step one here. Cover your tush with the client so that they know what the issue is, and they can step in, and then probably escalate either with that MSP, or if they're unresponsive, with the vendor in that specific scenario. So whether that's Datto, like in this one, or some other EDR, so that they can prove that they own these machines, and hopefully get their help in trying to uninstall.
I mean, without that, there's just some murky waters of like, if the outgoing MSP still has a contract through the end of the month, just throwing it out there, and you forcibly remove their tools, and then something happens, it's like, well, then who's on the hook for that, right? You removed it without permission, or the it gets it gets messy real quick. So having the documentation and the cover your butt policies, or whatever it is, procedures.
I would say for me, it
Yep.
took a lot before we started even thinking about forcibly removing stuff. I can only think of one or two times we ever did that, and that was really because the previous MSP just kind of disappeared into the sunset, not a normal transition. For the most part, we took the approach of, like, MSP, you know, client, you initiate the comms with the local MSP, the incumbent, and go from there. Now, you know, I'm from a relatively small city, upstate New York. We knew all of our major competitors pretty well anyway, and had a working relationship with them. So this didn't turn into an issue very often. Like, you know, we'd hear who it was, and then, like, oh, I know the project manager there, and we just kind of worked it out. That's also another good point. Like, if you're in any kind of environment that you have friendly competitors with, this really isn't going to come up all that often anyway. You see the same faces over and over again, and you know, it's good for everyone to make this seamless, because at some point there's going to be a transition the other direction, and it becomes easier. I'm also not a big believer in using the presence of tools or software as like as some kind of carrot or some kind of stick, in like a carrot stick relationship. It's not a negotiating tool. Same reason I don't like hosting our client domains or things like that. Let the contracts and let the attorneys deal with that stuff has been my approach.
So we didn't experience this, but heard from another MSP who did, where they had a client who had competing individuals in the C-suite, where they wanted their MSP versus the other MSP without communicating to each other. And so they weren't aware of this, that they weren't replacing the other MSP until they went in to do onboarding. And of course, the other MSP refused to remove their tools because they had an existing contract, and someone else in the C-suite was fighting for the other MSP. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen anything like that, or heard of something similar, but how would you handle a situation like that?
Man, That one gets well, I mean, RMMs can play together nicely. Like my first thought is like that's an internal problem, not our problem, right? We're contracted to do work, so I'm gonna deploy the tools. And if my EDR agent, picks up just throwing it out there, like running crowd, like we're running different software. So like the one I'm using, Sentinel-1, and they're using CrowdStrike, and typically they don't play together very nicely if they're installed. If it keeps coming up, is just like, hey, this is an issue, and like it's an internal. Like you have to put it on them to kind of figure it out.
Yeah, that's the approach I would take too. If there's anything contested like that, I really try to stay out of the middle of it. Just let the client know you can't execute what you're trying to do because X, and then work with them to figure out the technical side of it. But the contract relationship stuff with any other providers, stay out of.
Yeah, it becomes you advise them on best practices, and that's maybe where the power of no comes in. Like, hey, we can't deploy this, we can't do certain things because of this, and when this is solved, then we're ready to move forward.
Do you guys provide any documentation to your clients during offboarding so they know what to expect, or do you discuss it during onboarding?
We run both of them as a project, so it's almost like a project plan of like, hey, here's what we're doing. Onboarding, we have like a 10 things doc, like, hey, these are 10 things that you either need to ask or we need from you. Upload it to this link so we have it for documentation. And then outgoing is, we provide the credentials and the project plan and basically give them weekly updates with what's been going on with exact time frames.
Yeah, we try to set expectations very well. I'm probably too nice because I never wanted to be that guy that shows up and like rips out the managed firewall and says, "Good luck, guys," even though your new one isn't ready yet. I know some companies operate that way, and it's like, well, too bad you canceled the service. It ends in the month. We'll just work something out with like billing them for an extra couple weeks if they need it or stuff like that. Like it's just not worth it to blow up the bridge that way. So we would set timelines and let them know what to expect, and say, yeah, please have your new provider, email me to coordinate when to pull the tools off, all that stuff. Really just tried to remember that even though the client is leaving as one, there's only so many providers in the area. They may be back at some point. And two, it's just a not great thing to do to totally blow up somebody's business over like what's ultimately a couple $100 bill for you. Like, I don't know, that my rep is more important than a few $100.
No, I absolutely agree.
I don't know. Everyone's got a price, Matt. So we got to figure out what Matt's reputation's worth. More than a couple hundred. We'll find the number out one day.
Yeah.
Well, let's
move on to our next story.
That segs really nicely into the next story. So, given the example that Matt said is like, oh, it's not ready, the managed firewall, we need it. Your lack of preparation is not my emergency. The title started it all. New user started today, and I need accounts now. I can't remote in. I'm working remote. Need to be configured. The list goes on. This comes from the sysadmin subreddit, but this is something we deal with in the MSP world all the time. If every ticket's an emergency, then no tickets are an emergency. How do you handle those sort of situations?
And it's all about setting those expectations early up front and having documentation, right?
Yeah.
I know easy to say that, but I will be also the first to admit that I've been very guilty over the years, bending the rules, not necessarily holding boundaries as tight as I should for special situations that pop up, and but then that inevitably comes back and bites one day when someone's like, well, you did it for me this one time, or you did it for this employee, why can't you do it for me? I don't know. How are you guys handling it?
In that specific situation, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Josh.
Do you give them, when you're onboarding, like do you train them on like the severity of how to, I guess, submit your tickets, or not so much SLAs, because that's another conversation, a debate we could have, is do you publish SLAs, but more or less like hey, this is our escalation path when it comes to severity 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, anything like that?
We do. We do an onboarding handbook for our clients, or client handbook that they can reference, that has all that information in there as far as our urgency and priority matrix, and some examples of what that looks like that they can reference. But inevitably, someone always tries to push that boundary.
The your lack of preparation phrase is not my emergency, I think, is a little reductionist. The reality of business is sometimes it kind of is. Like, you're just not gonna. The underlying cost here is to fix the relationship with HR, right? Fix the process for onboarding new employees so you're ahead of time. That being said, if I get a request at the last minute and I have time to fulfill it, I'll fulfill it, because the ultimate goal is to have the business up and running, right? Like, yeah, if I have competing priorities and other stuff going on, and let's be honest, most of us usually do, then yes, it might take a back seat. But if I'm in the middle of like installing, a new server, or setting up a new hardware or something, I can put that off to the side for 20 minutes most of the time and deal with setting up a new user account. And the relationship capital of helping them is sometimes worth it in that case. Like, it's one of those deals where I almost equate it to like, walking in a crosswalk and getting hit by a car. Like, yeah, you were technically right, but you still got hit by a car. Like, it's, I don't know. I find that a little easy to say, and doesn't always reflect the reality of what's happening in a relationship oriented business.
Well, so how many times are you going to take that ticket before you put your foot down, Matt?
Well, you're going to fix the relationship with HR. That's the thing, right? And so if you fix that, then when something exceptional comes up, it really is an exceptional thing. Like, we need to count at the last minute for some reason. That's the thing. I think these are really underlying process issues more than anything else. But when there's truly something exceptional, then, like let's say you have an emergency come up, IT security server goes down, right? The last thing you want to hear at the moment is, well, you should have replaced that server when I told you about it, and now I can't help you until next Tuesday, right? Like, that's just not the way we operate.
Yeah, well, I think Henry put a great quote in chat, so let's give the mic to Henry to do a mic drop here.
Yeah.
The quote is, "The goal isn't to be inflexible, it's to make reliability repeatable."
That's right.
So you need to have flexibility in business. Things happen, emergencies happen. You need to be able to roll with them. But, for the 99% of things that are not, the idea is that you want it to have repeatable expectations that you can manage for people. And you can't do that if you are constantly jumping into those and treating them all as emergencies.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well,
and I agree with that. Don't treat them all as emergencies, but like, that can't be your default response either, right? When an emergency happens, deal with the emergency. It's just the challenge is getting to the point where those requests truly are something exceptional and out of the norm.
Absolutely. Well, let's speaking of emergencies, that brings us nicely to our next story here. 5 felony charges for Palm Coast IT administrator accused of launching cyber attack on his company after he's fired. Richard Wozniak, 41, was arrested for 5 felony charges for allegedly cyber attacking his former employee after being fired. The Spice and Tea Exchange hired him as an IT system administrator in October of 2024, fired him January 14th for concerning behaviors. Minutes after the termination call, Wozniak allegedly infiltrated the company's firewall, email, and security systems, deleting company data. He reportedly messaged someone saying he had his company, quote, in a chokehold. FDLE investigation traced the attack to the username r.wozniak. He faces computer fraud, tampering, and communication device charges, potentially up to 35 years in prison if convicted on all counts. So, clearly what had happened is there was a disconnect with HR, and they fired the guy and didn't put their offboarding ticket in, right? Like, that's...
I'm picturing this gentleman on like his makeshift pirate boat with a pet alligator. Since this is a Florida man story,
Oh, it sounds like
Is it
John
a Florida
McAfee.
man story?
It is a Florida man story.
It does sound like John McAfee, although he ended up dead, so hopefully not.
Yeah. So
yeah, those videos were wild that John McAfee used to put out. That's for sure.
Obviously, what the guy did is extremely wrong, and he's facing punishment for it. But this could have been prevented by good offboarding practices. Making sure that the tickets are handled in a timely fashion, escorting somebody off the premises, in the communications. Is this something either of you have had to deal with?
I mean, we have a detailed process that we do for both internal and for helping clients with offboarding employees. But we did have one instance with a person we were interviewing that we ended up calling the police on to help make sure they left the building, but nothing to this extent, that's for sure.
I think this is illustrative of an issue that comes up in small organizations frequently, and that is you end up with 1 or 2 people with significant amounts of access to everything, and it happens in small MSPs, right? Everyone jokes about having that one guy who kind of runs everything. Sometimes C-level execs who insist on keeping full admin rights to everything as they move up, like all that kind of stuff. And it is something to think about. Like I remember when I left my MSP to go to vendor world, I was kind of coaching the rest of the team through, hey, I have access to all this stuff. Make sure you change this password. Make sure you change this. Make sure you revoke this. Here's what's going to break when you get rid of my account because the API key got used, like all this stuff. And honestly, I was over permissioned at the time. And I think it's a worthwhile exercise to think about, do you have anyone like that who really does have access to everything? And, if the personnel you have on staff allows it, is there an opportunity to get some separation of duties set up so that someone doesn't have full access to everything like that? It's also a good chance to look at remote access, right? Like, if you have systems where the management interface is only available through external connections with conditional access policies applied, then you reduce your attack surface significantly by disabling their Entra or whatever identity provider you're using. So I would take this and use it as a risk management or even almost like a quasi tabletop exercise to think about what your potential attack vectors could be if you let someone go. And like kind of ask yourself, if I disable someone who's privileged their account in our identity management system, what is still open? And spend some time thinking about that.
Yeah, this is absolutely it is. That's a good point on this. It's a crazy story. It might be humorous for those on the outside that didn't have to experience it, but these type of stories are great to bring back for inflection on, hey, how could this happen to us? How can we, prevent this from happening, making sure it doesn't happen? And it goes back to kind of the basics of cybersecurity. the account that was used it appears to be just a daily driver. So there was no separation of duties in that case. And again, maybe smaller organization, you don't have all of that. You have one person with the keys to the kingdom. But I know here, like I personally have 4 different accounts privileged to different various systems, daily driver, and then 3 different privileged accounts for doing different tasks. So, there's as part of the offboarding, it's, hey, these privileged ones get deleted, main one gets disabled, and trying to SSO everything as possible. So once my account's disabled, well, now I lose access to everything else. But, it is a great tabletop thing to go back and check with your organization if this happened.
So it's kind of a hilarious story too. The more you dig into it, so he's on the HR person calls him at noon, and he makes comments on the call about your company is not prepared for what is coming your way. They meanwhile had not fully disconnected him yet during the call, and that was so they say that it appeared to have been a movie-like race between IT employees. He was one step ahead of his colleague and locked him out.
Oh man, I'm just imagining this unfolding in real time. Like, it's entertaining for us on the outside. It must have been not a lot of fun internally.
Yeah.
All right, we got one last story here for you. Turns out we needed to hire a pen tester to figure out we've been given domain admin to, well, everything. I work in support. I've just been quietly tossing users or their machines into the domain admins whenever they hit weird permission errors. It's not the best practice, but guess what? It got things working and stopped my tickets from piling up. Thought I was being helpful. Fast forward to last week, we finally bring in a pen tester because apparently paying someone loads of money is easier than looking in Active Directory once in a while. Within minutes, they clock that Domain Computers is a member of domain admins. So now every machine and system have full domain admin rights. The sysadmin is acting surprised, like, oh my God, how could this have happened? He even posted on Reddit. Good thing he didn't put the company name. Now I'm wondering, do I come clean and say I've been doing this, or stay quiet and see if he confesses too? Feels like he might have been doing the same. Either way, we love that it took a pen tester and an invoice to find something that's been wide open for months. Top auditing. So clearly this is from our shitty sysadmin, so it is supposed to be slightly humorous, but it does raise a point, and I know I've said it before, is don't lead with a pen test, in my opinion. If you don't have a good base level of cyber maturity, start there, aligning to a framework, and once you're aligned and you have a pretty good lay of the land, that's when the pen test can come in and figure out where the gaps are. I don't know if you guys are the same or anything, if you want to debate that fact or anything, any comments here?
No, I agree. I'm glad that this came from shitty.
I know.
Yeah. And I didn't catch that subreddit at first, so I was like, damn.
Right? There was an initial question of this. I hope this is satire until Josh said where it's from.
Yeah. Hey man, maybe he thought the global admins counter and Enter ID was a leaderboard. You got to get the high score.
Yeah. So if I give a serious comment on this, there is sometimes something to a third party helping to enact change when there's some kind of, now, I mean, that says a lot about your existing relationship with the client. It's probably broken down by that point, but sometimes it does take someone from the outside to tell something that's been said numerous times already in most cases. To your point, Josh, putting aside whether MSP should be doing their own pen tests, that whole issue to the total side for a minute, assuming that you are one of the few with the capability and internal separation to properly do that, then yes, there's not a lot of value doing it right off the bat. The typical network's going to be Swiss cheese when you come in and get that more or less cleaned up to your standards, and then hand it off to either your internal division that's properly logically separated to be able to even do a pen test, or more likely a third party. And I won't even touch the like what is a pen test question because we only have 10 minutes left, but I'll just assume that the third party you bring in is doing an actual pen test, not like running Qualys or something.
Yeah, I think we've probably all seen when we've onboarded a client that VIPs or someone in authority has set up bypasses on various controls because it was too inconvenient for themselves. So, yeah, I think you're always going to come across scenarios like that, and it's going to come back to educating and securing the environment during your onboarding and stabilization process before truly calling in a pen test to actually double check your work. But I would be curious, like, what's the most ridiculous root cause you guys have ever investigated?
That's now you gotta put me on the spot and I gotta think.
Like I've seen, we've been asked to for gosh, we've had requests for Minecraft and other games. Trying to think what other.
That was the root cause. Like one of those sites ended up having something.
I know we've had there's been a fun issue where if the client allows like a bring your own device, or maybe they allow you to sign into Microsoft Office on personal computers, but then they hit that button to where it's like, no, don't like, there's the sign into apps only or let my device be managed. They hit the my device be managed, and we have a hardened tenant, and then all of a sudden their personal gaming computer that they've signed into Office with is now protected with Microsoft EDR and all that fun stuff. And you get an alert on Saturday because the machine Sexy Beast is trying to play Counter-Strike, and the anti-cheat kernel has triggered as a rootkit malware, which, to be fair, that's what it is, but clearly not a company machine, and it's raising the after hours. So that has definitely happened more than once.
Yeah, I guess the answer to this question depends on how you define ridiculous. Like some of the weirder things have been switches that got taken down because a cable failed in just the right way that it started arcing and destroyed a port or two. Actual, like we always joke, but actual cables where a squirrel got to it and made it unreliable. It was bent the exact right way. Stuff like that. It seems like an OSI layer 1 is where the most ridiculous things happen. As far as just pure bad config stuff, I mean, you name it. Like one client's last warranty, you just walk into some crazy situations, like an entire VM farm back, what was this, like 10 years ago, maybe, on like 5400 RPM drives in RAID 5 that everyone wondered why it was running out of IOPS quickly. Like just all sorts of weird stuff like that would happen.
Remember the first time I countered Windows Server 2000 in the wild, and it was like 2017. I was not prepared for that. Thankfully it was a migration project, but I was like, I am not, like, man, this is before my time.
We had a law firm bring me a stack of floppy disks for time slips to reinstall. Like, no, just no.
At least they didn't say, here's the backup, and it was a stack of floppies.
Yeah. All right. Well, we made it through the stories today. Let's look at our events here. What do we got coming up? All right, we got ChannelCon 2025, which is running from July 29th to 31st. You guys aren't involved with that, are you?
Maybe a little.
Slightly. Henry a lot more than me.
Yeah, so I will be helping with the ChannelCon pre-day, and we've got a couple.
because like we lost Henry. So Henry is running the pre-day with the community through the Tech Degenerates. So a lot of community-led talking and stories. So definitely check that out if you are able to go to the pre-day. If you're not able to go to the pre-day, find a way to go to the pre-day because you don't want to miss it. Matt, what will you be doing there?
I am talking about burnout in tech. That's a topic we've talked about on this show numerous times, and also doing a tabletop exercise during the pre-day or teaching about tabletops. And I think I'm doing a session during the actual event as well on Trustmark.
Sweet. Well, the other one is the IT Nation in Sydney from August 20th to 22nd. So if you want to go to the Upside Down land, that'll be there. And then, as always, we have IR Games. We're doing a free monthly game at the last Friday of every month. Be sure to check that out. All right, that is all we have. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you, Henry and Matt, for always being the amazing co-hosts on this. It's always fun. So we will see you guys next Friday, except I won't be here next Friday, and you guys will be holding it down because I will be driving for a family event. So I will. I think it'll be a couple weeks for me. I got back to back travel weeks again for me. So.
I'll enjoy and safe travels.
Will do.
All right. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a good weekend. Catch you later.
Bye.
This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.